We've all been there. You're speaking, making a point, maybe even pouring your heart out, and suddenly someone cuts and they talk over you. And in that moment, frustration bubbles up. Do you fight for the mic? Do you shut down? Or do you let it slide and replay the whole scene in your head later, wishing you handled it better? So I'm going to teach you exactly what to do. Welcome to the Jefferson Fisher podcast. Don't raise your volume, raise your presence. That single shift in mindset can change the way you communicate forever. Most of us think that being heard means being louder, faster, or more aggressive. We think if we push hard enough, we'll finally command attention. But volume alone doesn't equal influence. In fact, the louder you get, the more people tune out, and the less powerful your words become. Presence, on the other hand, is what makes people lean in. Presence is when you walk into a room and people notice without you saying a word. Presence is when you speak calmly, but the weight of your tone carries farther than shouting ever could. Raising your presence is not about being intimidating, it's about being undeniable. Think of the people you've admired most in conversations or meetings. Chances are they weren't the ones yelling over others. They were the ones who controlled the energy of the room with their steadiness. When someone talks and everyone else stops to listen, that's presence. And it's built long before the moment you need it. It's built in your self-respect, in your ability to stay grounded, and in your choice to value clarity over chaos. Presence starts inside. If you're not confident in what you're saying, your body will give you away. Nervous movements, rushed words, or defensive tones weaken your message before it's even finished. But when you slow down, when you breathe, when you let silence sit for a second before responding, you create gravity. That pause isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the kind of strength that makes people pay attention. Imagine you're in a conversation and someone interrupts. The instinct is to match their energy, to raise your voice higher than theirs. But instead of doing that, imagine simply stopping, letting them talk, and then calmly stepping back in with, "I'd like to finish what I was saying." Your volume hasn't changed, your presence has. You didn't get louder, you got firmer. And firmness resonates in ways shouting never will. Here's the thing: people may not always remember your exact words, but they will always remember how you carried yourself. If you constantly raise your volume to compete, they'll see you as reactive, even if your point is valid. If you raise your presence instead, they'll see you as composed, confident, and in control. That impression lasts far longer than winning a single interruption. Presence also means knowing the difference between battles that matter and those that don't. Sometimes raising your presence means saying nothing at all, letting silence do the talking. Silence makes people curious, and curiosity pulls attention back toward you. Other times, presence means speaking fewer words but choosing them carefully. Brevity with impact is more powerful than a storm of noise. Another part of presence is body language. People hear your tone, but they also read your stance, your eyes, your stillness. A calm face with steady eye contact will silence more chaos than a raised voice ever could. When your words and body match in calm conviction, people sense authority without you demanding it. That's the kind of energy that makes rooms pause. Raising presence doesn't mean suppressing emotion, it means mastering it. Anger can cloud clarity. Frustration can dilute strength, but when you channel that energy into composure, you turn raw emotion into refined power. People trust those who don't lose themselves when pressured. They trust those who can remain steady in storms. That trust builds influence, and influence is the true measure of being heard. Think about the leaders, mentors, or speakers who left the strongest mark on you. They didn't just speak louder than everyone else, they carried themselves in a way that made you want to listen. That's presence. And the beauty of it is that anyone can build it. It doesn't require a title, a spotlight, or a stage. It requires self-awareness, patience, and discipline. It requires you to believe that what you have to say matters enough that you don't need to fight for it. You only need to deliver it with conviction. When you raise your volume, you might win the moment. But when you raise your presence, you win the room. That's how you stop competing for attention and start commanding it. That's how you leave an impact that lingers long after the conversation ends. Don't raise your volume, raise your presence. Pausing can be louder than pushing back. In conversations, especially heated ones, our instinct often screams at us to defend, to react, to fight for space. When someone cuts us off or challenges us, it feels like silence means surrender. But the truth is, silence used wisely is not weakness. It's strength. A pause can shift the tone of an entire conversation. It can make the other person question their approach, it can pull attention back toward you, and it can create a weight in the room that words often fail to create. Think of the last time someone interrupted you. Your natural urge might have been to jump back in quickly to prove you weren't backing down. But when both people push at the same time, it becomes noise. Nobody hears the message because both are too busy fighting for airtime. Now imagine if, instead of rushing to respond, you paused. Imagine if you let the interruption run its course and then calmly picked up where you left off. That pause would not only disarm the other person, but it would also signal confidence. You're not scrambling for space, you're holding it. Pausing is powerful because it disrupts the rhythm of conflict. People expect pushback. They expect you to react the way they do. Fast, defensive, maybe even emotional. But when you choose stillness instead, you flip the script. The unexpected calmness forces the other person to face themselves in the moment. They become aware of their own energy, their own noise, and often that's enough to make them pull back. Silence also carries a natural gravity. When a room goes quiet, people lean in. They want to know what comes next. A pause before you speak makes your words heavier, as if each one carries more meaning. The same sentence delivered after a pause will hit harder than one blurted out in the middle of a rush. The pause tells people you are measured, you are intentional, and you are not controlled by impulse. There's another dimension here too. Pausing gives you time to think. It buys you a moment to collect your thoughts, to decide whether what you're about to say will help or hurt, to choose words that reflect clarity instead of emotion. In heated exchanges, the fastest response is rarely the wisest. But the response born from a pause carries weight because it comes from reflection, not reaction. People can sense the difference. Think about leaders or speakers you admire. They don't rush. They don't panic to fill every second with sound. They let silence sit. They let their words breathe. That silence, instead of being awkward, becomes magnetic. It's a sign of confidence to not feel pressured by gaps. It's a reminder that your voice doesn't need to fight. It needs to land. Pausing is also an act of control. When you pause, you show that you're steering the pace of the conversation, not the other way around. You're setting the rhythm, and that rhythm says, I will speak when I'm ready, not when you force me. That control is subtle, but it's undeniable. And people respect it, even if they don't admit it out loud. This doesn't mean silence is always easy. Pausing when you want to fight back takes discipline. It takes knowing that your worth isn't tied to winning every interruption. It takes trusting that presence can outshine noise. But with practice, it becomes natural. You start to notice how people respond differently when you don't rush, when you don't match their chaos, when you allow silence to work for you. The beauty of pausing is that it doesn't escalate. Pushing back often fuels arguments because both sides feel attacked. A pause, though, is neutral. It cools the air instead of heating it up. And in that cooler space, solutions can be found, respect can be restored, and your message can actually be heard. Pausing can be louder than pushing back because it speaks a language beyond words. It says, I'm not rattled. It says, I'm choosing clarity. It says, I know my voice matters, so I don't need to fight for it. In a world full of noise, the quietest person in the room often holds the most power. Here's the truth, you don't have to outshout them to outhandle them. Your power doesn't live in volume, it lives in composure. When someone talks over you, the natural reaction is to speed up, talk louder, prove your point. But that only feeds the chaos. Instead, stop. Pause. Silence is uncomfortable, and the person who interrupted you will notice. That pause becomes your spotlight again. You see, respect is rarely demanded effectively with noise. It's commanded with presence. And presence is built when you're calm, steady, and clear. Try this instead of snapping back. Simply say, I'd like to finish my point. Short, direct, and strong. You're not begging. You're not fighting. You're drawing a boundary with confidence, not hostility. Here's another layer. When you respect yourself enough to protect your voice, people take notice. They realize you value what you have to say, and when you model that self-respect, others are more likely to mirror it back. Now, let's be real. Not every situation will give you a perfect response. Sometimes, the best move is to let it go and circle back. But letting it go doesn't mean losing. It means you're choosing where your energy goes. Because not every battle is worth the bruises. The goal isn't to win every interruption. It's to keep your dignity intact. Remember, this firmness doesn't require aggression. Control of the room starts with control of yourself. And when you respond with composure instead of chaos, you shift the power back where it belongs with you. So next time someone talks over you, don't rush, don't compete, don't crumble. Pause, breathe, and calmly reclaim your voice. That's how you're heard, not just in that moment, but in the memory of everyone watching. Respect yourself first, or no one else will. That truth is sharper than it sounds because how you treat yourself sets the standard for how the world treats you. Too often, people wait for respect to come from others before they feel worthy of giving it to themselves. They wait for validation, for recognition, for approval. But the reality is, If you don't respect your own boundaries, your own time, your own voice, then others will learn that they don't have to either. Respect isn't handed to you. It's modeled by you. When you respect yourself, you show others how to engage with you. It's not about arrogance, and it's not about demanding constant praise. It's about carrying yourself with enough self-worth that people can see you value your presence. That starts with the choices you make daily. Do you allow people to interrupt you without ever reclaiming your voice? Do you keep giving your time to people who drain you without offering anything back? Do you say yes to everything even when it costs you your peace? These small moments of self-neglect don't seem like much in the moment, but over time they tell others that your boundaries don't exist, and that your voice doesn't carry weight, and that your needs don't matter. Self-respect is the quiet declaration that you matter, even when nobody says it out loud. It's the discipline of standing tall without waiting for applause. And it shows up in subtle but powerful ways. It shows up when you say, "I'm not available right now," without guilt. It shows up when you decide to walk away from conversations that belittle you instead of fighting endlessly for scraps of dignity. It shows up when you look at yourself in the mirror and know that you're worthy of being treated with kindness, starting with the kindness you give yourself. The danger of neglecting self-respect is that it invites mistreatment. People notice patterns. If you constantly let your time be wasted, they'll assume your time has no value. If you constantly let others speak over you, they'll assume your words carry no weight. If you allow disrespect in small doses, it grows into larger doses until it becomes the norm. That's why respecting yourself isn't optional. It's foundational. Without it, you end up negotiating your worth in every room you step into. But when you respect yourself first, something shifts. People sense it before you even speak. There's a strength in the way you carry yourself, a calm assurance in the way you handle conflict, a quiet confidence in the way you set limits. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to prove it. People feel it. And because they feel it, they treat you differently. They understand there's a line they can't cross, not because you're loud about it, but because you're consistent about it. Respecting yourself also means refusing to shrink for the comfort of others. Too many people downplay their talents, soften their opinions, or hide their true selves because they fear rejection. But when you shrink, you don't earn respect, you lose it. Respect comes when you're authentic, when you stand by what you believe, even if not everyone agrees, when you know that your value doesn't decrease just because someone else fails to see it. It's also about how you speak to yourself. The internal dialogue matters. If you constantly tear yourself down, if you constantly question whether you're enough, then you weaken your own presence before you even step into the room. Respecting yourself means speaking to yourself with the same patience and encouragement you would give to someone you love. Because the way you treat yourself internally bleeds into how you carry yourself externally. When you respect yourself, you give others a model to follow. You set the tone. You show them that if they want a place in your life, they need to bring respect with them. And when someone doesn't, you don't need to argue endlessly about why they should. You simply enforce the standard by walking away or setting the boundary. That consistency sends a message louder than any words could. I value myself, and if you want to be in my world, you must too. Respect yourself first, or no one else will. It's not about pride. It's not about ego. It's about understanding that your worth is non-negotiable. When you carry yourself with that truth, the world adjusts. And when it doesn't, you no longer adjust yourself to fit it. You simply move where your respect is matched. That's the power of self-respect. It teaches others how to treat you. But more importantly, it teaches you how to treat yourself. Firmness doesn't need aggression. Too many people confuse the two, thinking that the only way to be taken seriously is to raise their voice, harden their tone, or push back with force. But firmness is not about overpowering someone. It's about being unshakable in your stance without losing control of yourself. Aggression often comes from insecurity, a fear that if you don't fight hard enough, you won't be heard. Firmness, on the other hand, comes from confidence. It says, I don't need to shout for my words to matter. I don't need to intimidate for my presence to be felt. Think about the difference between a storm and a mountain. The storm rages loudly, throws energy everywhere, and demands attention. But when it passes, it leaves little behind but chaos. The mountain doesn't need to move or shout. It simply stands. It commands respect because of its stillness, because it cannot be shaken easily. That's firmness. It's steady, calm, and clear. People are drawn to it because it feels unshakable. Firmness is setting boundaries without hostility. It's looking someone in the eye and saying, I'm not okay with that, without raising your voice. It's refusing to back down, but also refusing to let anger take the driver's seat. Aggression escalates situations. Firmness de-escalates them because it removes the fire while keeping the strength. When you're aggressive, people may comply, but it's often out of fear or irritation, and that compliance fades quickly. When you're firm, people respect you, and that respect lasts. There's also a hidden danger in aggression. It undermines your credibility. When you get loud or hostile, your message gets lost behind the energy of your delivery. People stop hearing your words and start reacting to your tone. Firmness avoids that trap. It ensures your message stays clear and your presence stays strong. People walk away remembering what you said, not how you lost control saying it. Firmness is also rooted in self-control. It requires patience. It requires the ability to pause, to breathe, to choose words intentionally instead of letting them spill out recklessly. That discipline not only protects your dignity but also amplifies your influence. People trust voices that stay calm under pressure. They trust people who don't get dragged into emotional storms but still stand by their convictions. You can see this difference play out in everyday life. Picture a workplace meeting where two colleagues disagree. One pounds the table, raises their voice, and tries to dominate the room. The other speaks calmly, refuses to be interrupted, and repeats their point with steady conviction. Which one do you think the room respects more? The aggressive one might get noticed in the moment, but the firm one earns credibility that lingers far longer. Firmness also makes space for respect on both sides. Aggression often humiliates or belittles others, which destroys trust and connection. Firmness communicates strength while still leaving room for dialogue. It says, I will not move from my boundary, but I don't need to tear you down in the process. That balance keeps relationships intact while still making your stance clear. Many people avoid firmness because they think it requires harshness, but that's the myth. Firmness can sound calm, it can sound kind, it can sound almost gentle. What makes it firm is consistency. When you say something and follow through, when you hold the line without exception, when you don't let others push you past what you know is right, that's firmness. And the beauty of it is that it earns respect without demanding it. Firmness doesn't need aggression because true strength doesn't need to prove itself. Aggression is often a mask for weakness, a way to cover fear or uncertainty. Firmness is born from knowing who you are and what you stand for. It's steady, controlled, and powerful in its restraint. People might not always like it, but they will always recognize it. And when you practice firmness over aggression, you build a reputation not just for strength, but for credibility, influence, and respect that lasts far longer than any loud outburst ever could. Control the room by controlling yourself. The quickest way to lose influence in any conversation is to lose control of your own emotions. People often think authority comes from dominating others, talking the longest, or speaking the loudest, but real authority comes from composure. When you keep yourself steady, when you don't let interruptions, disrespect, or tension rattle you, you send a clear signal, I am in charge of me, and because of that, I can guide this moment. Others may try to take over the space, but they can't take over your presence unless you hand it to them. Control begins with awareness. You can't manage the energy of a room if you're blind to your own. Notice how your tone shifts when you get frustrated, how your pace quickens when you feel unheard, how your volume rises when you're eager to be taken seriously. These little signs are clues that emotion is trying to take the wheel. And when emotion drives, clarity usually gets left behind. But when you pause, breathe, and ground yourself, you give your mind time to catch up with your mouth. That space allows you to respond with intention rather than react with impulse. Rooms are mirrors. The energy you bring is often reflected back to you. If you show panic, the room feels scattered. If you show anger, the room tenses. But if you show calm control, the room begins to quiet. People instinctively lean toward steady voices in moments of noise. They look for anchors. By keeping control of yourself, you become that anchor. You don't have to demand the room, you draw it in by your steadiness. Think of a situation where chaos takes over, maybe a heated argument or a meeting spiraling off track. The one person who stays composed immediately stands out. While others scramble for dominance, their calmness becomes the center of gravity. Without raising their voice or fighting for space, they begin to guide the room back to order simply because their energy doesn't add to the chaos, it neutralizes it. That's control born from self-control. There's also a subtle strength in refusing to be baited. People will sometimes push your buttons to get a reaction. They talk over you, dismiss you, or provoke you because they want to pull you into their level of noise. The moment you take that bait, you hand them control. But when you stay steady, when you refuse to react emotionally, they lose their power. The room doesn't remember the provocation, it remembers your composure. That composure communicates that you're not only confident in your point, but also confident in yourself. Control doesn't mean suppressing emotion, it means directing it. You can be passionate without being reckless. You can be assertive without being hostile. You can be firm without being cold. The key is deciding before you speak what tone serves the situation best. That decision gives you ownership of the moment. It keeps the power in your hands instead of scattering it across the noise of the room. People trust leaders who stay calm under pressure. They follow those who don't panic when tension rises. That trust doesn't come from being the loudest or the most forceful. It comes from being the most composed. And the beautiful thing about control is that it's contagious. When you slow down your voice, others often slow down theirs. When you choose measured words, others begin to mirror that clarity. You set the tone, and the tone reshapes the room. Controlling yourself also means protecting your focus. You can't guide the room if you're consumed with winning arguments or proving points. Sometimes the smartest move is not to respond immediately. Sometimes it's letting silence do the heavy lifting. Sometimes it's circling back to your point calmly after someone interrupts. Each of those choices shows you're not letting the room dictate your behavior. You're dictating the room by the way you behave. Control the room by controlling yourself isn't just a strategy, it's a discipline. It requires practice, patience, and the courage to resist the urge to fight noise with more noise. But once you master it, you'll notice the shift. People listen differently. They respond differently. They treat you differently. Because in a world where everyone is trying to outtalk each other, the one who controls themselves becomes the one who controls the room.